What if one of the most powerful lessons in operational resilience didn't come from a disaster, cyber attacks, or even a business interruption? What if it came from a soccer stadium? Recently, following a FIFA World Cup match in Texas, Japanese fans once again made headlines, not because of what happened on the field, but because of what happened after the game. While thousands of fans headed for the exits, the Japanese supporters stayed behind to clean their section of the stadium. Not because anyone told them, not because there was a reward, not because cameras were watching. They did it because it's what they do. It's a habit, it's a process, and it's the culture. At the same time, another World Cup story captured attention around the globe. A German fan, simply known as Freddy, became a social media sensation through his interactions with people from different countries and cultures. His journey demonstrated something equally as important: adaptability, openness, relationship building, positive energy, and more. Today, we're discussing what these two very different World Cup stories teach us about resilience and why consistency, not perfection, is often the difference between the organizations that thrive and the organizations that struggle. And as we have often reminded leaders, resilience isn't built during a crisis. It's built long before one occurs. Remember to stay tuned at the end of this video to hear Mike share why he wrote his Amazon #1 best-selling book, Operational Excellence, and how you can apply the lessons from his 30 years leading organizations. Hello, everyone. I'm Jerome Ryan, joined by Mike Janko for Impact Analysis. Mike, what struck you most about these World Cup stories?
Thanks, Jerome, and hello, everyone. The Japanese fans cleaning the stadium provide one of the best resilience lessons I've seen in a long time. A lot of times people will ask, what makes certain organizations more resilient than others? And many assume the answer is better technology, larger budgets, more resources, or more sophisticated plans. But often it's something much, much simpler: consistency. The fans cleaning the stadium weren't following an emergency procedure. They weren't responding to a crisis. They were demonstrating a behavior that had been reinforced over time. And that's how resilience works. Organizations don't become resilient because they wrote a plan. They become resilient because they consistently perform the behaviors that support resilience. Think about it. One exercise doesn't create preparedness. One annual review doesn't create resilience. One training session doesn't create your capability. The organizations that perform the best under pressure are usually those that consistently prepare before that pressure arrives.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. And one of the biggest misconceptions in business continuity and operational resilience is believing that completion equals capability. Many organizations celebrate completing a BIA, finishing a risk assessment, conducting annual exercises, or even updating the continuity plan. And make no mistake, those are important activities, but they are not the goal. The goal is operational capability. Think about professional athletes. Nobody expects to train once per year and perform at an elite level. Yet organizations often expect resilience to work exactly that way. The reality is, plans become outdated. People change roles, technology evolves, risks emerge, supply chains shift, and resilience requires continuous reinforcement. The Japanese fans weren't displaying a one-time behavior. They were displaying a culture that had been practiced repeatedly over many years. That's what organizations should thrive for in building their organizational continuity plans.
Jerome, we've heard of many overseas FIFA fans here in the US, like Norway supporting rowing in Times Square, the Scottish bagpipes. Yet the story of Freddy from Germany highlights another critical resilience capability. So German soccer fan Freddy was one of thousands of visitors to the US. By the way, Freddy doesn't share his last name or image, or we'd share it with you here. What made him unique was his use of social media and declaring what a great country the US is based on his experiences here. He immediately got 700,000 followers, ended up being a special guest at a concert, given tours of football stadiums, hung out with Houston police, met a mayor, and got a VIP invite to the White House. He was stranded at the airport in Dallas to Canada, due to weather, so multiple airlines, private jet owners, and the governor offered to help him. Adaptability. Throughout his journey, Freddy connected with people from different backgrounds, cultures, and perspectives. He demonstrated curiosity, openness, relationship building, and positive engagement. And these are the same characteristics that are essential during crisis. When an organization faces disruption, leaders rarely have perfect information. So the team's success really depends upon building trust quickly, sharing information openly, forming those new relationships, and adapting to changing conditions. So the organizations that recover fastest are often the organizations that collaborate the best. Resilience isn't simply about protecting what exists today. It's about adapting to whatever comes next. Freddy's experience reminds us that resilience is fundamentally human. Technology matters, processes matter, but relationships often determine the best outcomes.
Yeah, I love following Freddie and the other fan stories as they make their way across the United States. So let's talk a little bit about what consistency now actually means in terms of operational resilience. Many leaders hear that word and they think conduct the annual review, but consistency is much bigger than that. Consistent organizations review risks regularly. They exercise frequently, building that muscle memory we've talked about before. They test communications, they update recovery strategies, validate suppliers, develop leaders, measure performance, learn from failures, and most importantly, they create this system of accountability. Critical questions they often ask are, how often do we review emerging risks? How frequently do leaders discuss resilience? Do employees understand their roles during disruption? Are lessons learned actually implemented? Are exercises improving performance? Are leaders remodeling resilient behaviors? Because resilience is not a project, it's a discipline, and disciplines require attention.
Hey, Jerome, one of the most overlooked benefits of resilience is competitive advantage. Now, organizations that consistently invest in resilience, they often recover faster, retain customers, they protect their revenue, they reduce downtime. Employee confidence is better, and they have better decision making. Meanwhile, organizations that only focus on resilience when problems appear are constantly reacting. The difference is like physical fitness. I've been a martial artist and into fitness ever since I could crawl. So I really see the parallel here. You can't exercise intensely for one weekend and expect to be healthy for the next year. Health comes from consistent behaviors. Resilience works the same way. The strongest organizations aren't necessarily the smartest. They aren't always the biggest, but they are the most disciplined. They consistently perform actions that matter before they need them. That's what creates confidence under pressure and a better response to risk.
That's right, Mike. The World Cup stories of Japanese fans and Freddy from Germany and many more may seem unrelated to operational resilience, but they actually reveal two of the most important principles in our profession: consistency and adaptability. One demonstrates the power of habits and culture, the other demonstrates the power of relationships and openness. But both are essential because resilience is not built through occasional effort. It's built through repeated behaviors performed consistently over time.
And organizations that succeed during disruptions are rarely the organizations scrambling to prepare after a crisis begins. They're the organizations that practice consistently, learn continuously, adapt quickly, build strong relationships, and reinforce resilient behaviors every day. Resilience is what you do repeatedly, not what you do once. And over time, consistency becomes culture. Culture becomes capability, and capability becomes competitive advantage. We invite you and ask your teams and other leaders to subscribe and like at Impact Analysis 2026. And as we like to remind all leaders, you can manage risk now or its consequences later. Hi, I'm Mike Janko, author of Excellence in Operational Resilience and co-host of the new YouTube channel, Impact Analysis. I wrote this book so you can learn of my journey of both personal and operational resilience. During my career as Goodyear's Director of Global Business Continuity and various leadership roles at both Nestle and Stouffer Hotels, we successfully managed through nearly 4,000 significant events and crises throughout the US, Latin America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, and Asia Pacific.
A key takeaway during all those events was our teams performed the best when they were led by resilient leaders. My personal resilience is based on being an athlete, martial artist, and setting two world sit up records. And a resilient leader does not allow themselves or their teams to fail. Operational resilience is not just about responding to crises. It's about leading teams to adapt, adjust, learn, and succeed through all types of events. If your organization wants to improve, I suggest you get my book, Excellence in Operational Resilience. After all, the only thing harder than being resilient is explaining why you aren't.